My name is Eric Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast with your host, Eric Van Horn, here with today's guest, very special guest, Tony Hulbert, and he is the CFO, Chief Financial Officer of Mighty Dog Roofing and Horsepower Brands, along the companies that both Josh Skolnick, Zach Butler, and myself own. And so this is going to be a real fun one because you're going to get some insight on like what it's like as we build Mighty Dog, as we build out Horsepower, and the types of things that we're doing are what well-established franchisors have in place. So we're going to be talking about a lot of that. But before we get started, if you have not joined the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, just go to franchisesecretsgroup.com. And you will be in the community of franchisees, franchisors, and franchise buyers. But Tony, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I was choking there.
I know I caught you at just the right time. I think it was at the last Discovery Day.
Yeah.
I was trying to catch people ask questions when they had food or drinks in their mouth. So
yeah, you did.
I'm still doing it today. But you have a very interesting background. You were friends and knew one of the co-founders of Mighty Dog, and you've been on the franchise in the franchise game in some different ways over your career. And so why don't you go into some of that? And then I want to go into some of the things that you're doing at Mighty Dog that I think franchisees will find very interesting and franchisors will find very interesting. So why don't you go ahead and give everyone the bit about your background?
Yeah. So out of college, I actually, graduated with an accounting degree and went into the auditing practice and tax practice. And so I worked for a regional CPA firm for about 4 years, got my CPA license, did that piece. I quickly learned that auditing was not for me. That's not where I wanted to continue with my profession. Was able to, luckily enough, at a young age, become a chief financial officer for a Pepsi distribution system. And in the Pepsi system, when you're independently owned, it's a distributor network, and it's much like a franchise. And so when I look at how many years I've been part of a franchise, it really starts back at that time. I was a chief financial officer of that operation, which had 5 locations and a big operation. I did that for approximately 4 years.
Give us a sense of the size of that operation, because when people think 4 locations, they're probably thinking, probably something smaller than it actually was.
Yeah, no, it would be considered a large business in the community that we were in. We had 45 sales reps across, multiple trucks driving all the way to deliver. So you're delivering to all the grocery, all the convenience stores, everything in the territory. In that system, you had the rights to distribute those products under the portfolio in your territory. No one else could come into your territory and do that. So it was a sizable location. Employee size was over 300. So it's a big operation. It was a great opportunity at a young age to be a chief financial officer in a established business with established brands like Pepsi and Mountain Dew, et cetera. I mean, they had Aquafina, the water, they have established brands. And so it wasn't, this growth mode entrepreneurial idea, like it's already established and you can kind of run the play and do some things with that. So was able to do that for 4 years, got my taste for entrepreneurship, went to work for a franchisee in the nutrition space. And that group I spent, about 4 years with, and we spent a lot of time growing to a lot of stores, 60 plus stores. This was in retail. And so at a certain point, that environment got very competitive. E-commerce became more of an issue. Big box retailers started selling some of our products or category products. And so then we started selling stores. And I was in the chief financial officer role with that group. But
with
that was
60 plus locations kind of at its peak.
Yep. But in 17 states.
Wow.
So that was a huge challenge. And even at this point, Eric, I was still, fairly young, gaining experience every year along the way, learning along the way, negotiating leases and acquisitions with buying stores, and then on the other end of selling them. So there's a lot of back and forth, not your traditional accounting. But in that process, probably more than anything, learned a lot about key performance indicators and really what are the right measures that drive results. Because obviously I had access to the financials, but as you measure things, did it achieve the result you wanted at the end of the month? And in retail, being open every single day, having access to literally every single sale throughout the day, you just get constantly, you have so much information, you have to really figure out what's the right information to measure and what.
I want to hone in on that because this is one of the major topics that I want to talk about. This is one of the things that you're doing at Mighty Dog is KPIs dashboard for the franchisee, for the franchisor, so we can see things. But what you had there at those 60 stores, that's when you really started to, we all understand the importance of KPIs and dashboards and things like that, but it's never really so important that there's time, energy, money that's invested into that at a significant level, plus knowing what really should be measured and monitored. So why don't we go into that? Because you can go like what you learned at the nutrition stuff at that time, and then how you're doing it and viewing it at Mighty Dog Roofing. So I'd love just to have the conversation of KPIs and dashboards and where you get that information, how you gather it, and what's important and what you do with it.
Yeah, I think the first step to any measures or dashboard that you come across with the company is whoever's gathering that, and a lot of times it ends up being a CFO or somebody in the back office with accounting experience, is that person is flexible and open-minded enough to take feedback from marketing, take feedback from sales, and take feedback from operations, and find ways to get all those departments to work together towards the right measures. And you got to be flexible. Typically, accountants are not ones that like change. I mean, they're just not accustomed to that. They like structure. They go through the process. And what I found is, and it was hard for me in the beginning with going in this entrepreneurial mode, is you got to be willing to change, monthly, weekly, even quarterly, and make sure you're willing to change those measures if it's to get the right result. You don't want to just to change. You want it to be the right measure. But that's number one, Eric, is whoever is gathering your data, you want to make sure that person's flexible and open-minded, because if you get the right data pulled together and you can get people in marketing that are not numbers people, they're creative people, bought into the measure, that's crucial. Salespeople, they'll love them. They'll dig into the KPIs and they'll challenge it and they'll tell you that this is wrong and this isn't right. Take that feedback on. Same with operations, but how can you get all of them to come together? So that's number one.
How do you do that? So how do you do this? So we'll stay with number one. How do you do that? Because I love KPIs, and I'll probably have, and I'm sales and marketing, but how do you talk to the marketing department, or maybe it's your marketing people out there if you're a franchisee? So this is good for franchisees and franchisors. So as a franchisee, I've always had to create dashboards myself. And at one point in one of our brands, we spent $20,000, $30,000 plus to create some of these things that we needed because the franchisor didn't have it. And they had over 100 locations. Did you create this yourself at the nutrition franchise as well? Or did they have all of that for you as a franchisor?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
They did, looking back, they did good job comparable to some other franchise locations out there. They did do a good job.
That's interesting. I found the same at my first franchise. They did a better job than most that I've gone to since then. And I didn't realize it at the time. And Tony, this is how it's going to be. All of the Mighty Dog franchisees, this is going to be normal. Like, we are setting the standard. They come in and they have this amazing dashboard with like numbers, and be able to have all these KPIs to measure stuff against, and to be able to look at their business real time and what's going on, and be able to make decisions based off of that. That's going to be normal to them. They're going to be disappointed when they go into, if they get a second or third brand that's not part of Horsepower. But there's some great brands that are doing things like that. But I just want to set the stage. If you're a franchisee, this isn't just a franchisor conversation. These are things like that I've done before in different brands. And so take this and learn from it, and start measuring the things that you can in your, maybe it's even one single location. So when I hear Tony say, get marketing to talk, bought in, like sales and operations are, it can be a marketing person. I have one marketing person in the field doing marketing. So, or for us, it's a big marketing, it's a marketing department over at Horsepower and Mighty Dog. So I just want to set the stage, like everybody can learn from this. So, so how do you get, whether it's a marketing department or that single person out there marketing, to buy into KPIs without being, coming up with excuses why, it may not work, or it's not accurate, or things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. As you hire marketing people, I think a key attribute is you have to hire anyone in your organization, people that want to be accountable to a measure. And that measure can be defined together, but sometimes there's marketing people there's people in any department, in any organization, that they do not want to be accountable. So it has to start with, are they willing to be accountable towards some type of measure? And if they have that right mindset from the gate within your organization, that's important. You have to establish as a leader. Then from there, I think the conversation is easy, because they understand accountability is part of your culture. So now it's just kind of drilling into, like, what's a measure that you can hold yourself accountable to, you can have control over, and that then I can agree that has an impact on top line revenue or results, or whatever the case might be. When I speak to a marketing person, I always stick with marketing qualified leads, MQLs. You can Google it. There's MQLs, and then there's sales qualified leads, SQLs. Marketing's primary goal is to bring leads to a sales organization. So whether you're business to business, business to consumer, like, how are you bringing that lead to the sales team or the sales system, so that they can have the opportunity to convert that sale into a win. So the marketing team is not responsible always to get the sale to happen, but they got to get it to some point in the funnel. Mm-hmm. And so if you can break that down or segment that out, they're willing to be accountable, and you can agree on a measure that gets them in this funnel, gets them to this point. Generally, in a lot of industries, it becomes easier. At Mighty Dog Roofing, and we've talked to this, Eric, is just the simplicity of it. You can truly measure in roofing how marketing can establish getting a candidate or a lead into an opportunity, which we talk to as an appointment. Like, you can actually go visit the homeowner, you have an appointment on the books. That's the point where it's a marketing qualified lead. Marketing, in my mind, has done their job, got the appointment set, then it moves to sales in the sales qualified lead to convert them into another opportunity.
And it's important, again, at Mighty Dog, we all agree on this. So we meet and we all agree on this. And I love the fact that our CFO says funnel and understands the sales and the marketing and all of that stuff as well. But you understand that stuff, and you're really good at it. But the point of that, all of that is, we all understand this. Sales understands what a marketing qualified lead is. And when it becomes, we deliver it to them, and then it's their responsibility to be accountable for the thing that they're supposed to be accountable for. So that's point number one. We spent a lot of time on that, but point number one, we've wrapped that up. What is kind of number two? Do you remember?
With respect to how you get to the right measure?
KPIs, dashboard.
Yep. Yeah, being flexible, having somebody in your organization that's in control of that, being flexible. Number two, when I look at certain measures, I learned this at Pepsi, and again, Pepsi was an established framework. We all wish we could be in a business like Pepsi with national brands like that. But you have leading indicators and lagging indicators, and really try and look at your measure of which one does it fall into. A lagging indicator.
Yeah, go ahead and go into leading and lagging for somebody that might be a C student like myself, or treat me that I'm at a 4th grade level. Give a good kind of short tutorial on leading versus lagging indicators.
Yeah. So I'll start with lagging. That's after those are the end results. That's what accountants are really good at. Like it's hindsight 2020. I can look at a financial and tell you 45 days after the month end what you did right, what you did wrong, and give you a lot of advice. And lagging indicators are crucial to a business, but it's after the fact. The time's already gone. So if it was a temporary thing, that's something you can't fix ongoing. If it's a permanent thing, it's good discussions of how you resolve those things or change those behaviors. So lagging, truthfully, is important, but like if you try to look at it as a weighting system, it's 20 to 30% in my mind of when you structure a scorecard or key performance indicators, that should be like 20 to 30% of it. The bulk of it should be leading indicators, and those are behavioral things or measures that get to the end result. So again, with Mighty Dog Roofing, if your end result is to increase your sales, start with the customer, the homeowner, and work yourself backwards. Start with the homeowner, what got them to decide on to go with you with their roof? And it started with, if you start with that point and you move back, they made the decision. And so that was a close of some sort. So you can measure the close ratio. That's easy in sales. That's easy. But what got that salesperson to the door? Well, we got an appointment. How did we get that appointment? It came from a lead. How was the lead created? And there's a certain amount of traffic that generates a certain amount of leads to get us to the appointment. And so those are all like leading indicators to get us to the homeowner's kitchen table to make a decision. And that ultimately is what creates the success for the lagging of your revenue increased X and et cetera. So when you go into expenses, it's the same type of things of how you manage your materials and supplies to how you manage your labor. There was always decisions that were made to that point. So start at the end, work yourself backwards so you can find something in the beginning part of the whole process that you can measure the starting point. So you can identify it quick, adjust, and get the end result you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. So you got the leading versus lagging indicators on a dashboard. So let's explain a dashboard. So in a dashboard, What are some of the things that you look for in a good dashboard? I know that the one that you sent me, it looks good, but also had some really good data in it. But from your standpoint, because you're creating this thing for us and for all of our franchisees, and you've got a guy that's working with all the APIs and bringing everything together to be able to produce this. And so in your mind, what's the purpose of a dashboard, and how do you go about even creating it?
Yeah, so that kind of goes in the third, and I just have 3. So the first one being flexible, being willing to change it. Number 2, just balancing it between leading and lagging to make sure you got a lot of leading indicators on there. And the final, when you go to create it, you can't overcomplicate it, because we did that. I mean, I've done that in every organization I've been a part of. We've overcomplicated it, and we started out with thinking to measure 5 items, and we were measuring 30. And then we find out, and then you have this grand meeting, and you're like, hey, we should consolidate. And then 6 months later, you back up at 30. Like, it was just, that's just natural with you want to continue to drill down. So I think it's simplicity. And you make sure that when you log into that dashboard, somebody can look at it and make some decisions for the week. I do a lot of my mind always operates in a 5-day work week or 7-day work week. And because I just feel like every person can operate within that short time period. And if you're looking over 30 days, it's too long. So if you log in a dashboard and there's some key measures that are meaningful to help you make a decision for your next week coming up, and make adjustments if needed, that's incredibly important. But keeping it simple, concise. If you want to measure more, that's almost like a secondary dashboard or something else that comes out as a report that even to me becomes like a lagging indicator where you're just looking at the overall, you're working on the business and making big changes that will affect all your day-to-day stuff. Does that make sense?
So when you're talking about right now, is that thing the dashboard on things that can be impacted within the week? Is that like, I mean,
Yes.
it's more real time, like you're looking at it like something's wrong here. And I mean, is it like a dashboard on a car? You're able to glance at it and see everything's working fine. You don't have to do anything. But if something's up or down, like the gas tank, you notice that it's going down. Something needs to happen. Is that kind of how you see a dashboard?
Yep. And visual, I think we're all visual. The majority of the people are visual, and majority of entrepreneurs that I know are visual. They're willing to drill into the data and have access, but initially a visual, more of a dashboard like you see on your car is the ideal to start with. Yes.
So what were some of the
having
things
drop downs where you can change date ranges or territory ranges, and having drop downs to manipulate the chart beneath it. It's obviously things you want to do, but real-time data that you can manipulate based on different selection sets.
So what are the things that are important, whether it's Mighty Dog, whether it's, past at Pepsi or the nutrition, like what are some of the things that have been important to you in the past or currently?
Yeah. The customer cycle, the buying cycle in I don't care what company, you could be business to business, business to consumer, how e-commerce, you have to understand how you get your service or product to the end person that's purchasing it, and hyper focus on measuring those pieces. So I talk funnel, and the funnel is the industry term, but like literally helping walk your organization through that funnel. You have to translate that from an accountant mind into a sales and marketing mind, so everyone's on board with it. That's crucial in every single dashboard. If you can get it there, it's not easy in some industries. It truly isn't. And if you're established business and you're doing really well, sometimes it's to dive into it. Sometimes it just is hard to get them committed to that process because they just feel like the result from last week is because of this, and this, and they don't want to take any ownership in that result.
So it's a customer journey. It's a customer journey. I think sometimes we make it more complicated. Yep. And as I've looked back, even in the yoga business that I'm in, we were talking about it the other day, and we were with the team, and it starts with, like you said, the marketing, and we're increasing sales, we're increasing conversions, but it's really not that complicated. And a lot of us entrepreneurs like to make things more complicated than it needs to be as well. And so part of, what I hear you saying and what we're doing is just focusing on the core things that drive revenue into the business. And I think for all of us entrepreneurs out there, as we think about what we need to measure, and all of this is measuring what really matters in your business, whatever that is. And this could be a simple Google Doc that people input information in every day, whatever that is, that it could be a simple dashboard like that. And we've done that. I did that 19 years ago in one of my businesses. It was a spreadsheet that was given, and they uploaded things. So you need to not make it complicated, boil it down to the things that you can make decisions around too, right? It's not just a number, but you need to be, if something's wrong, you need to know what to do with that. And so as you're creating that dashboard, like what goes into what's going around in your mind as you're like, this is the thing, is there drop downs that you drill down into to find out what's really wrong? Like in your mind, how often should they be looking at that? And then like, what should a franchisee do if they're thinking about creating one right now?
Yeah, I love that you talk about, even you don't have to go spend $10,000, $40,000 on a dashboard. If you don't have that budget, you could do something as simple as a Google Docs, Google Sheets, and you could start doing that because you're trying to affect a decision, making a decision easier for owner. But at the same time, if you open it up to your employees or the people that are executing the plan, you're trying to get the right behavior. So either
Mm-hmm.
changing a behavior or you're highlighting and rewarding the behavior that's right.
Dude, say that again. Say
Yeah,
that again. That was good.
I think it's less about the decision for the owner, because usually the owner can make those decisions. It's about the behavior, and if you're not sharing it with the rest of your team members, and you could do it with Google Docs as easy as that, is it creating the right behavior? So in a salesperson's mind, if you have enough appointments, are you actually, I mean, unfortunately, are you actually going to those appointments and making those appointments valuable? And we can measure some of that by your close ratio. We can drill into it to see the estimates that you're producing. Are you adding certain product lines? So like in roofing, are you adding gutters as a one more sale opportunity or siding opportunities? And we can look at history and say, wow, you've done 40 estimates and actually none of them included gutters, windows, or siding. Based on our historical data, that's not normal. Like there usually is a need of some sort where you should at least be highlighting that to customers, or you didn't talk about this certain process, or you didn't use a drone to have this. When you did the estimate, you didn't use the drone. Why didn't you? We find that that's a success rate to it. So you use the drone 10% of the time, and your close ratio is not at the target you want. We feel like if you increase your drone usage on your estimates, that you'd close more often. So it's all behavior. I think is, you want leading indicators are the right ones, but then it's ultimately trying to change the behavior. And that's why you have to be flexible and open-minded that whatever you put out there, I'm just one person putting out there a dashboard. There's a likelihood that I'll be wrong on some of it or a majority of it. I have to be open to the sales team to give me feedback and saying, this is what gets the better result, Tony. Can you measure this? And then we just start tweaking the data, show it differently, and help them out.
And from a franchisee standpoint, if you have one salesperson out there and there's really nothing to measure them against, you need to go and measure them against the best in your franchise. And you probably don't have a dashboard that talks about the close rate and the this, that, and the other. Mighty Dog, we will, but most brands don't have that. And I would go find that. And whether it's talking to the franchisor, which may or may not be accurate because they may or may not track it themselves, which I think is really important information, because you need to understand what your franchisees are doing out there, because that's the best way to help everybody, and to understand who's doing well so you can learn from your best franchisees. And then, but let's say your franchisor doesn't have that information, or it's not accurate because they're not tracking it. Find out who the top franchisees are, and find out, as you're talking to a top franchisee, ask them what they're good at and what they're not good at. And if they're not good at the sales, then and they're good at everything else, you probably don't want to ask them what their sales, that KPI or whatever that measurement is. So you talk to franchisees, you find out the ones that are really good at sales, you find out what their measurement is for whatever that thing is that you're measuring, and then you compare that against what your person's doing. Yep. And the numbers don't lie. The numbers are like, that's the thing that you need to make decisions on as a franchisee. And I'm guilty of this. And so I say this with passion, because I've made excuses for my team before because I thought they were good at X, Y, and Z, but they weren't really good at A. And so because I thought they were rock stars, and they are rock stars in a certain area, and they were weak in others, because most of us are strong in some areas and weaker in others, I gave them a pass on a certain thing when I shouldn't have. And if I was measuring things the right way, there would have been no excuses. And if I showed them the same thing, there would have been no excuses. So it hurt me in one of my businesses. I'm sure it's hurt, and that's just one that I know, smart enough to know that. But franchisees out there, like, this is important for you to know. Like, pick the 3 things that you should be measuring and go learn that from other franchisees. What are they doing? What are they measuring? If you don't even know where to start, go ask them where to start. How did they start? And if nobody's measuring anything, then get a group of people that want to start measuring something and start measuring that with them. It could be a simple email thread that you have. It could be a Google Doc that you share. It could be a like a Telegram or a WhatsApp thread that you all talk about, or a text thread, but I would start doing something to compare against something else. That's the only way you know if you're a rock star. And if you're a rock star, your person's a rock star, you want to reward that behavior, and you want to let them know as an owner, they're working for you. You want to reward it. But if they're not, and you're treating them like they're great and they're really the lowest performer out of a group of 5 franchisees, and now you realize that, well, now you have something to help them with. And we all want to help our employees get better. And so it's just, sorry, I went off on that little tangent, but I think it's important because it's so easy for us to start making excuses. And that's what I love about this, Tony, is that our franchisees are going to be able, it's not about them, it's about them having as a successful business as they can. And this is one tool in their tool belt to be able to measure that. And there's no excuses. And what is going to happen, because it happens with every franchise organization, they're going to be the people that are absolute rock stars, and they're going to be crushing it, and the numbers are going to show it. There are going to be other people that struggle, because it happens with every entrepreneur, every business out there, and every franchise organization. The ones that are struggling don't know why. And at least if they have the ability to see people that are doing well, they go visit them, they go learn from them, or we have them on a conference call or a webinar and we highlight them and they're helping other people. That's when franchise systems get better. And absolutely. I was on a call a Zoom the other day with a handful of franchisors, and I was saying, how much do you share with your franchisees? And a lot of them were sharing a lot of information. I thought you would like this, Tony. They were sharing a lot of information system-wide on sales or whatever those performance measures are. And as a franchisee, I've always enjoyed that. And it happened early on in my franchising career. And it seemed, as the years have gone on, as year number 1 turned to 3 to 5 to 10 to almost 20, the amount of data that is shared across the system seemed to slow down or seemed to stop or just is non-existent. And I was talking to these franchisors about it, and they're like, no, Eric, we share that type of information. And it was really refreshing to hear, because I love to share information. And I think some of the excuses that I've heard in the past is, we don't want that information to get out to competitors. And I'm like, I knew why they didn't want that information to get out to competitors, because it was poor performance. And it wasn't because it was so great. It was poor performance is why. And so anyway, I got off on that tangent a little bit, but I love the fact that we are going to be sharing information, as much information as we can with franchisees, so they can measure their performance against others in the system.
Yeah. And you talked about top performers. If you got enough data, so often your top performers, a lot of times, especially in sales, is they just are able to relate to people, and it doesn't matter what product or service. They see sales as a people business, and that's how you should see it. And they're just really good at it. Right. So then sometimes those top performers, you can really focus in on those results and think this, and this. It's like, how do you move that next 80% to improve them? That bottom 10%, often, they're not even doing sometimes. Usually your scorecard just show it. They're not even doing, step 1 in the process. And so they might call you and say, I'm not successful. Okay, you understand the sales process, and there's 3 measures that we have within the sales process, and you're not doing A, B, or C. Until you do those, I can't move on to this next step. But that middle mark oftentimes are doing A, B, C well, or not well, mediocre. And if you can improve them, that's when they start to really, that's when the throttle gets pushed down. It's not that top 10%, because they're reaching that peak already. That bottom 10% there's a lot of resources that can be spent just to do the basics. It's that middle mark that if you can elevate them to the next step of this, how you tweak this or tweak that, that's where the growth happens.
And when, as a franchisee out there, this was me. So this was me. If I was out there listening, thinking I am doing everything, and I thought I was doing everything and this is my first franchise, until numbers were held up to me. Eric, are you doing this? And there were actual numbers. And I I remember, I'm like, I thought I was doing everything or most everything. And then I realized what everything really meant because there was a number associated with it. And I was doing about 20% of what I could be doing, or 20% of what the top performers were doing. And so if I wanted to be in the bottom 10 or the bottom 50%, then I was on my way to doing that. And I remember really early on, I didn't see progress like others were seeing progress. And then I realized what they were doing and what it took to be at 100%. And it meant doing 100, business to business visits
Yes.
every single day. I was doing 20 because I thought that was a lot. I was doing it wrong. I was doing it inefficiently. And even inside, I was presenting it the wrong way until there was the right way to do it. But I saw other franchisees that were like me and they never improved because they thought that they were doing enough. So there's a mindset thing in that too, to want to understand why you're not achieving results and being open to feedback of the things that you might not be doing right. Because, that was me. I wanted to improve and I was hungry to improve and I was hungry to learn. But if you are, if you have an ego, if you have those things that, it should be working better than it really is, then it's your fault. But everyone out there has the ability to change. And that's the beauty of the franchise systems that are actually sharing data and helping franchisees get better as a whole. Like there's reasons why the top are in the top.
Yeah. And I think accountability is something that's thrown out there so often, but it's
you
hard
talk
to be
about it every day on the call with me. So keep going on accountability, because we do talk about that. Us owners, you're accountable. Yeah. We are accountable as co-founders. So yep. I love that about you.
Yep. And it's hard to be accountable, and it's not hard to ask for people to be accountable, to get everyone in your organization, each one of them, to be accountable to their aspects. But once you get there, and I don't know if you ever really get there, but once you got the majority of your organization with that same mindset, then the scorecard starts to work, because they want to actually improve those results. Of you saying versus 20, you do 100 of X. It was really just a mindset of being accountable to a number. You found out what the number needed to be, and then now you have to be accountable to it. And once you become that, then you hope to start seeing the results. It's all about accountability. You got to hire people that want that feature. If they don't like accountability, I don't care what department they're in, they have to like accountability as some part, to some degree, or I don't believe a right fit for any organization.
Yep. Well, if you're not going to be accountable, you're not going to be the right fit at Mighty Dog. And I think it's important, I think as our franchisees that are coming on board and going through training in the months ahead, like they know that there's accountability at the corporate office, because I've seen franchisors where employees don't have any accountability. I'm a franchisee and I'm like, what is going on? Over there at the franchise organization, nobody's accountable to anybody. I can't get things done. And so that it really goes both ways. So I think our franchisees are going to, they don't know it now, but they're going to love that there's accountability, at the corporate office, because that's how it's run. And a lot of it's through Traction, through the entrepreneur operating system. So can you talk about that? So I've been talking about it a little bit on the podcast. I use Traction. I use talk about Gino Wickman. By the way, Gino's going to be on the podcast, so that's going to be awesome to actually have him on. But talk about Traction.
So I got introduced to Traction through the nutrition process. We were about 2 years into high growth mode. Then we tried to bring that in. And truthfully, we never were 100% on Traction. We never got there. I did take Traction. I did work with Traction into the Pepsi mode. We had a CEO who was bought into it at the time, and so we got involved in that. And truthfully, I don't feel when I left Pepsi, we never were 100% into Traction. And then at Mighty Dog, we're implementing the features, and we're getting closer to 100%. I want to really try to find an organization that we can get to 100% within Traction. But it does, Gino, that's going to be a great podcast that you're going to have with him on, because here's a person who's wrote a book, that has encapsulated something what should be simple within a business philosophy. He's made it simple, but if you just follow his components, it's a difficult thing to follow all components of it. But if you did, your organization would run itself as an organization, and they wouldn't run because Eric's the owner and he's coming in and we got to do really well today because he's going to be here for this week. It's an organization that just runs on its own because it's a system. And I've read a lot of different books, a lot of different things, and it resonates with me the most out of anything else I've read in terms of if you commit to it and follow it, it's really good. And I can go pretty far into it, but
so I know that there are, I know franchisors that are doing it. My friend Bedros Keuilian at FitBody, he's doing it at the franchisor level. He introduced me to his implementer, who is going to be on the podcast as well. An amazing guy. And then I know franchisees that are doing it. They have organizations, and the franchisor doesn't know. I don't think their franchisor knows anything about Traction or Gino or anything. They're just doing it. They're just doing their thing. But this franchisee understands the value of Traction. And so has implemented it into his business as a franchisee. So you don't need to have an incredibly large organization to do it. Franchisees can do this, and you can. I would say you just get started. The book that I would recommend is Rocket Fuel. It helps you understand the difference between a visionary and an implementer in real simple terms. And it's super clear to me that I'm a visionary. Yep. And I've had to operate recently as integrator in this role. And it's hard to do. But I think my kind of takeaway, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is that the visionary and the integrator, those two roles, those two different types of people have to respect each other, have to understand how the other thinks, and have a mutual respect for each other versus just think, oh, they're just a visionary, or, oh, they're just an integrator. But if you start to understand that's who they are at the core of who they are and have a mutual respect, that's when magic happens. How would you kind of sum that up?
I would agree with everything you said. It's one of the most important relationships you have in an organization. You do not have to be, you could be a 5-person company. You still have a visionary, a person that's starting it and thinking, big picture, and also just outside the box thinking that you have to be willing to accept. You have to have a person on your team that's willing to take those ideas and figure out when to put them into process and into play, when the right timing is. And that's the integrator piece. Rocket Fuel, I think, resonates with you because because I think you are the visionary, and like that is your personality, and that's what gets you wake up and get excited about thinking about different ways to address different problems. But where my role or my personality is, I actually enjoy getting into now take that and actually figure out how to set up a system to actually implement it. I actually enjoy that. And it's two different types of personalities, and you have to recognize, you got to hire the right personality for each one of those buckets. But having that relationship, two completely different personalities being cohesive and respecting each other, and an integrator is immediately thinking like, okay, now my person's thinking about that they want to do this, and this, and you're just like trying to figure out how to implement what we just talked about from 2 months ago. So it's a challenging role, and you have to be open and communicative of what's possible versus what's an idea, and then what's an idea that we can make possible. And Rocket Fuel is a great book to intro you into it, but Traction really gets into the nuts and bolts of how you then create the team underneath all of it.
So you just told us to read Traction. I was on another podcast talking about, like, it was one of the franchisor's favorite books. And I said, well, Tony, our CFO, said, Eric, you got to read Traction again. And it's been years, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to do it because it's the accountability piece. Like you're not going to tell us to do something if you don't think it's important. And if you tell us to do too many stupid things, we're going to have a problem. So everything that you've asked us to do, it's on the priority list. And so I'm looking forward to reading that book again, as I've already been implementing it. You know, like you said, we're not 100% there. We still got a ways to go with it, but we've been doing it consistently even before you came on, and then you came on and we leveled it up even more. But I'm looking forward to reading that book after getting into it for a while to understand more, just to understand it in a different way. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, Traction. Tell us about Traction. Like the book. And, you know, I liked Rocket Fuel. And as you said, I can see why you like that. I'm like, yeah, I see why I liked it too. Cause it's a much smaller book, and it had two different pieces to it. So, and I think, so go ahead, Traction.
Well, it breaks it down into 6 components, but it starts with your vision, and you got to take whoever the vision's coming from, whether that's an ownership group or a leadership team, can come from both, or even to a degree, depending on your organization and the culture, it can come within the whole company, what the vision is. Right out of the gate, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like, you don't want to share your numbers in terms of revenue or profit necessarily. It's something that a lot of business owners don't want to do. Some do, for whatever those reasons are. You can create a vision around, okay, I don't want to share my revenue or my profit, but I know I want to reach a level where I have 8 salespeople on my organization. That's part of my 3-year or 10-year vision. Like, put it to some other numerical value that resonates, is tangible, that you can grab onto. So I want to be in the top 10 in this industry that's published by this article once a year. I want to be in that top 10. Yeah, it doesn't disclose revenue, doesn't disclose profit, but it's tangible. You can put that in their vision. So it's so critical to show and to retain employees. Like, I mean, it's a big part. I didn't make my decision to come over to Horsepower and Mighty Dog in a day. It was a long decision process, and it was more me at my level is trying to understand the vision. Where are we going to go with it? And just trying to, and I worked a lot with, you know, Zach on that piece, but that's ultimately what made me bought into it. So being able to disclose your vision to all your employees as they hire, that's a key. Our franchisees may only have 3 to 5 employees to run a roofing industry that could do a lot in revenue, or roofing business that could do a lot in revenue, but still having your vision for your company and your territory is key. Like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be the top in your territory, the #1 roofing contractor in the territory? There's probably a way you can measure it with the suppliers you're ordering from. They could probably tell you, yeah, you're #1. So there's something tangible. Vision is the starting point. And Gino,
and by the way, we are going to be the #1 roofing franchise.
Absolutely.
In pretty short order.
System-wide revenue. Absolutely.
Right.
And Gino could share with that, but that vision can take, I mean, there's marks in that book of, it could take 2 days, because there's a lot of aspects of your vision of what are your uniques to you? You're in roofing, but what's so special about you from somebody else? What are your values? What are your core values? What are things that matter to you? Is integrity important to you? I mean, it's important to everyone, but is it so valuable that when you make company organizational decisions, you're not going to cross integrity, or whatever those values are? So core values is another industry term that a lot of people float out there. I think the right teams figure out what those values are, and they truly operate based on those values, and they're willing to lose business or lose customers over it, or lose suppliers, or lose team members, employees over it if you're not in line.
It's the line in the sand.
Yes, absolutely. So like vision's the first one, but man, it's so critical that you have such alignment on that piece, because that's what drives the remaining 5 components. And data is a component, which gets into the measurables with the scorecard that we've already talked about. That's a component of Traction. Data. Processes is a component. We haven't really talked about that, but so I see a lot of companies, and this has been my own experience, where we did a lot within Traction, but when it came to processes, and now actually physically writing out or diagramming or doing videos of what your processes are, so that when people come in, you can say, this is our sales process, this is our marketing process, this is our estimating process within roofing, having that document. Now, in the franchise world, you got a lot of that with an operations manual. You're probably used to that within your experience. But I don't know how often was it laid out in a simple way. where you actually used it. So how often did you use your operations manuals in your franchises? Was it often?
They're all still in a box
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah. So, and so you gain a lot of your experience through talking to other franchisees and just jumping in and learning from mistakes. How can you create processes that people will actually want to engage in and be a part of? So I love that you do videos a lot within our organization. And I think videos is the way of documenting processes within Traction.
Yeah, because just real quick on that, just a quick takeaway for everyone before you go to the next point.
Yep.
A really quick way to document a process is I like to have stuff, there's times to have it written out, right? But even within that, you can have a video of you're showing something online or a way to do something. And Loom, Loom, is a really easy way to capture that. So you just, it's an app that you download on your computer. It's you just, when you're ready to document something, you click start, and then it has a little picture of you in the bottom left, and then you can just document what it is. If it's a social post, I'll go say, hey Caleb, I'm looking for this type of graphic, you know, and then once you get that, then I want you to go over to this folder and grab the copy for it, and then run it through this program. So then you can make sure it's within a certain type of, you know, the picture is a certain size. This is what it should look like. And then, you know, and then I'm just documenting he's following the mouse, he's following the process instead of writing it all out. And then boom, you can just upload that video. It's a link, and then just put that into the SOP process. And so for the visual learner, the one that wants to see it, it's just super clear to them versus the person that wants to read a 10-step process. So that's a quick little tip, Loom video. So keep going, Tony.
No, I love that idea.
I sent you a video the other day, like, hey, how do I do this?
Yeah, I'm getting used to it, but I like it. It's just quick and easy. People is a component of the Traction. People's always discussed in every business. Do I have the right people, the right seats? It really gets in there. To assess your people, it's really measuring that person against your core values, your vision, the things that you have in place for accountability and measures. There's a lot of great people that might not be the right fit for your company that could excel, and they move over to company X, Y, and Z. So it's really, Traction helps you identify that it's not so much the person could be great, but maybe not the right person for your organization. And it goes through an analyzer, but you have to have those other components in place before you can really analyze that. And then you get into like issues and traction, which a component's called traction and a component's called issues. And that's like in the nuts and bolts of how you operate your business. And he has processes of how you run a L10 meeting.
L10 is what?
L10 is just leadership type of a meeting. He has Gino Wickman in his book walks you through the same agenda that he says you do the same day, same time, every single week, so that people are accountable to meeting at that time. But you have to go through an agenda, because so many times you have meetings, you're just coming into a room and there is no topic to discuss or no specifics. He walks you through of how to conduct a meeting in a correct way. Now, the beauty of that is the people that are attending the meeting, they know what the structure is, they know what the point of each process is, and you're just not getting lost. So you go through it. I think you run into people like this too. People are like, hey, do you do traction? Everyone's like, yeah, I do traction. A lot of those people are saying that they do the L10 meeting once a week, and they do that religiously, and that's great. But then they're missing some other components. They're missing all these other components. And so while you're doing traction, if you just adopt all of it, you will see the true benefit of everything.
I love it. We could go on and on. That is a good overview of Traction. One of the things that I've been learning a lot as this is the first time I've done Traction. We have the software that we go through. We do these level 10 meetings, and it's just very systematic. Sometimes we get through them fast. Sometimes it takes a while, but it's great because it's just like clockwork. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm wanting to discuss something at the wrong time. You're like, nope, let's drop this down to issues. Boom, we'll discuss it there. It just keeps things moving efficiently, because I hate meetings. Like I don't like meetings. I just don't like anything about them. So it's super efficient. And I'll say this, I mean, we've been doing it for months, And we always show up. All the owners, all the founders, everybody always shows up and ready to go. And I can't wait to dig into it more. And I think this is going to help our franchisees. And I think any franchisor out there or franchisee that's using traction now is like, yes, Eric, go. This is it. But it should, anybody that's franchisor that's using traction or similar type process should give the franchisee a lot of confidence that they are really looking out for their franchisees' best interest. Tony, man, we didn't even get to talk about Horsepower Brands and the cool things that we're doing with that. So maybe this is your first appearance of several on the Franchise Secrets podcast.
I'd be excited to come back anytime. Anytime you'd like me to be on, I would attend.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.